Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night to find your partner standing at the foot of your bed, their eyes open, staring right through you? No? Well, consider yourself lucky. My girlfriend, Lisa, she's a sleepwalker. Not the harmless, shuffling around the house kind. It's more like living with a stranger who pops out only in the wee hours of the night. 2 months back, we took a step forward in our relationship and moved in together. She'd mentioned her sleepwalking habits before, but experiencing it firsthand was another thing altogether. The first few nights were unsettling, sure, but nothing had prepared me for the parade of sleepwalking antics that were to follow. There were nights I would wake up to see Lisa just standing by the bed, her eyes a void, lost in some nocturnal trance. Those blank, unseeing eyes were like open windows into a world I couldn't begin to comprehend. A bone-chilling fear that's hard to shake off. The terror hit another level the night I woke up to the sound of the front door unlocking. I jumped out of bed to find Lisa at the door, her hands working on the lock, mechanically, like she had done it 1,000 times. I felt a kind of dread then, something cold and primitive. The realization that the woman I loved was moving around, seemingly conscious but not present. That's the kind of fear that doesn't let you sleep easy. From then on, each day was as regular as any could be, but the nights morphed into a twisted suspense story. Would I wake up to her at the window, staring out into the darkness? Or would I find her in the living room, meticulously arranging furniture, her movements automated, devoid of any emotion or awareness? But the memory that sends an unshakable chill down my spine is the sight of Lisa, standing over me, with a butcher's knife gleaming ominously in her hand. A tableau of nightmarish proportions. Imagine waking up to that, to the woman you love poised over you, brandishing a weapon, her face as blank as a slate. There's a raw, primal fear that grips you then. It's not her. It's something else. Something you can't fight because it's within her. Nudging her back to bed, gently prying the knife from her grasp, taking the knife from her felt like disarming a bomb. One wrong move and I might wake her. She woke up the next morning, oblivious to the heart-stopping horror of the night before. And me? I was left with the echo of that fear, a gnawing reminder of our chilling nightly adventures. Living with Lisa is like tiptoeing around a minefield, not of the paranormal, but of the unknown, the unpredictable. It's a love story entwined with an unnerving dance with fear. That's our twisted reality. And believe me, it's scarier than any ghost story you'll ever hear.
Living with Tom had always been an adventure. That's what I used to tell my friends when they'd ask about it. When we first walked into our new apartment, we noticed an odd detail. The bedroom doors had locks on both sides. It was a strange feature, something neither of us had ever seen before. We joked about how serious the previous occupants must have been about their privacy. But the apartment was perfect otherwise, with an unbeatable view of the city, a living room big enough for both of us to lounge around comfortably, and a rent that didn't break the bank. So we shrugged it off, deciding that the double-sided locks weren't enough to turn us away from an otherwise perfect apartment. We'd been living together for 3 months, and I was just beginning to learn his habits, his quirks. But then, I discovered something I never thought I'd have to deal with. Sleepwalking. The first time I noticed, it was just past midnight. I woke to the sound of a soft, repetitive click. Blinking the sleep from my eyes, I'd squinted at the bedroom door, listening. The sound was unmistakably the turning of our front door's lock. Must be the wind, I'd murmured to myself, turning over to go back to sleep. Then, it happened again. And again. A chill ran down my spine as I followed the noise one night, finding Tom fiddling with the lock in his sleep. Watching him sleepwalk was like watching someone I didn't know. His movements were mechanical, distant. When I called out to him, he didn't even flinch, just continued with his lock fixation. That's when the realization hit me like a bucket of cold water. I tried to rationalize it at first. Maybe it was stress, or a new sleep disorder. He would always return to bed, eventually, and in the morning, he had no recollection of his nighttime activities. Then, other things started happening. Our once secure apartment began to feel like a playground for a phantom presence. Window latches were left open, cupboards unlocked, all in the dead of night. I'd find kitchen knives on the living room table, or the TV remote in the fridge. It wasn't just eerie, it was downright scary. The night everything went sideways started just like any other. I woke up to an eerie silence and noticed Tom wasn't next to me. Cold fear bubbled up in my chest when I heard the unmistakable sound of the lock clicking shut. I remember lying there, my heart pounding, as it dawned on me what had happened. He'd done it. Tom, in his sleepwalking state, had managed to lock me in our room. A wave of panic hit me, the kind that makes you feel like your insides are twisting. I got up and dashed to the door, yanking the handle with all my strength. But it didn't budge. I was trapped. I pounded on the door, my voice filling the room as I yelled for Tom. But all I got was the echo of my own voice bouncing back at me. Then I remembered my phone. It was on the bedside table, its screen reflecting the moonlight from the window. With hands trembling like leaves in a storm, I picked it up and tried to dial for help. But then, my heart dropped into my stomach. There was no signal. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I was cut off from the world, imprisoned in my own bedroom. The hours that followed were a blur of terror and panic. I was alone, stuck in my bedroom, with no way of knowing what Tom was doing in his sleepwalking state. The apartment's silence was deafening, amplifying the sound of my heartbeat in my ears. It was like being in a horror movie, the suspense of the unknown adding to the fear of being trapped. I paced around the room, my steps echoing in the silence. I tried the door again and again, the handle cold and unyielding against my sweaty hands. I shouted for Tom, my voice turning hoarse, but it was like shouting into a void. I checked my phone every few minutes, praying for a signal, but it remained stubbornly out of range. Finally, when the first rays of sunlight started to peek through the window, I heard the door unlock. I almost cried in relief. There stood Tom, yawning and rubbing his eyes like nothing happened. But even though I was free, the fear didn't go away. It hung around, a dark shadow that wouldn't leave. Now, every time Tom sleepwalks, I can't help but wonder what he's going to do next. What if he locks me in again? Or what if he does something worse? I was living in a state of constant fear, and it was all because of Tom's sleepwalking.
I moved into a small, one-bedroom apartment downtown. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was mine, a haven from the stresses of everyday life. I was living alone for the first time, relishing the freedom, the silence, and the solitude. Then, something strange began to happen. Every night, without fail, at exactly 11 p.m., I'd black out. Like flipping a switch, lights out. And then, just as suddenly, at midnight, I'd snap back to reality as if I'd just woken from a deep sleep. An hour, gone. Vanished into thin air. At first, I wrote it off as exhaustion. Maybe it was the stress from the move, or maybe I was just adjusting to my new place. But then I started noticing the changes around me. My apartment looked different every morning when I woke up. Things were moved around, sometimes subtle, sometimes glaringly obvious. Chairs pulled out from under the table, books rearranged on the shelves, even the fridge stocked with fresh groceries. Then, the weirdest things started happening. My neighbors would say hi and casually bring up conversations we apparently had the night before. Conversations I had zero memory of. It was like they were talking about a different person, yet that person was me. It was terrifying. I felt like I was losing my mind, or worse, that maybe I was living with some sort of split personality. I mean, it wasn't like I could see any other explanation. I hadn't upset a gypsy, hadn't discovered an old cursed talisman, and as far as I knew, my apartment wasn't built on an ancient burial ground. It was just an ordinary apartment, in an ordinary building, in the heart of an ordinary city. Desperate for answers, I set up a camera in my living room. I needed to know what was happening during that lost hour. The next morning, I nervously played back the recording. I watched, petrified, as at 11 p.m. on the dot, my body sat up on the couch. My eyes were wide open, but they looked, well, vacant. Like I was there, but I wasn't. This version of me got up, went around the apartment, doing chores, preparing food. It even went outside, probably to chat with the neighbors. Then, exactly at midnight, it came back, sat on the couch, and went still. I watched this happen every night for a week, each recording more terrifying than the last. The fear was gnawing at me, and the unknown was worse. I sought professional help, both medical and psychological. I dug up anything and everything about the apartment's history, looking for anything that might explain what was happening. Despite my efforts, the mystery remained unsolved. Was I possessed? Was I living some sort of double life? I didn't know. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. Not the lost hour, not the activities of my doppelganger, but the not knowing. So, here I am, trapped in this cycle of fear and confusion. I've learned to live with it, as much as one can learn to live with something like this. It's a strange existence, this life within a life, this endless question of what happens when the clock strikes 11. What would you do if you were me? Would you run? Would you fight? Would you seek answers, or would you hide? But remember, the clock is ticking. It's almost 11 p.m.